This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
G'day everybody, thanks so much for joining me. I've got a chat with the late and great Andy Gill from Gang of Four to share with you. Now this chat has been available via the Scars and Guitars podcast app since January of 2019, but since the great man has passed on, I figured that I needed to get my act together and repost it here on YouTube for you people to listen to, because that is where the majority of the audience listens to the Scars and Guitars podcast. So here it is. Now, why is Andy Gill important? Andy Gill, apart from being the guitarist in Gang of Four and inventing an entirely different style of post-punk whilst he was in the group, he's a guitar innovator. Okay, so he's influenced countless number of musicians and bands. We talk about quite a lot of that throughout this conversation, but think Page Hamilton from Helmet, the guys in Fugazi, and of course, probably more recently, the more popular outfit that's achieved acclaim using a lot of his techniques, if you like, is Bloc Party. So maybe not that recently, but in the last sort of 20 years or so. Andy did pass away on February 1st, 2020 at the age of 64 due to a respiratory illness. So his absence is being felt, no doubt about that. Something else about Andy, he is an acclaimed producer. He worked with Red Hot Chili Peppers, the Jesus Lizard. There's that band again, been listening to them a lot lately. Apparently he did some work with Killing Joke, The Stranglers, Therapy, the group from Ireland, whose album Troublegum I listened to back to front back in the day, and also the Future Heads. So there's another interesting tidbit in here about his relationship with Gail Ann Dorsey, who went on to be David Bowie's longtime bassist. And he's really the fella that introduced Gail to David, and you'll hear that story in this chat. So here he is, the late, great Andy Gill from Gang 4.
I'm not sure what's going on with the times there, but it's a pleasure to talk to you regardless.
Yeah, I mean, if I was expecting somebody, according to the schedule that he sent me, I suppose, God, I don't know.
That's cool. If you've got other things on, I'll just let John know that we can reschedule if that's okay, if that works for you.
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we talk for a bit, and then we can, if you've got to head out, we can do some more tomorrow or something if you want.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, well, look, it's needless to say, man, I've been a fan for a long time. Okay, so when the opportunity came up to have a chat, I was really, really happy and pleased. Because, God, who was I talking to? Mark Burgess from the Chameleons not too long ago. So we do get a lot of bands of your ilk coming down here these days. And I spoke to Bez from Happy Mondays as well. So there's a lot of really great iconic British artists that are coming down here these days. And it's such a great thing because when was the last time you were in Australia?
God, I've forgotten. I know it was, it feels like 2 or 3 years ago, but I'm sure it was a lot longer. Yeah. That's the way time goes. But we're absolutely looking forward to coming back. And it'll be, I think it's the first time in Australia for new singer Jayla.
Okay.
So it's going to be a great experience for him.
Yeah.
Thomas was playing bass last time we were there. Mm-hmm. Thomas has been playing bass for 10 years. So I mean, obviously we're doing entertainment because it's 40 years old this year. But we're also playing things. The new album is called Happy Now, and that's coming out in March. And we'll be playing a few songs from that as well, and some stuff from the intervening years.
Yeah, well, one of the probably my favourite cut of yours, and I've only just recently discovered this as I looked on Wikipedia. But "Don't Fix What Ain't Broke" was actually was a chart success in the US. I didn't know that, but one of the key reasons I liked it, because I'm a bass player, it was one of the first times within that sort of music that I'd really heard prominent bass. And prominent bass, it actually reminded me a lot of the way Bernard Edwards from Chic approached his playing. And I'm just reading here now that it was Gail Ann Dorsey who played bass in there, but I actually thought it was you at the time.
Right.
What?
Right.
Because you're very in sync.
Yeah. Well, there's Gang of Four has always been really tight, and that's one of the from any era, it's always really important that the drums and the bass and the guitar lock together. And Gail is amazing instrumentalist. She's a brilliant bass player and guitarist. She's a brilliant bass player, and an extraordinary voice, of course, as well. As anybody who's heard,
Under Pressure,
yeah, exactly, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
with her Bowie years.
Yeah. Was that you who gave the introduction to David for Gail?
Well,
kind of.
I mean, David, kind of, yeah. I mean, he was very, very aware of her, and so I think Gail didn't have a choice really when David picked up the phone. I think that was the done deal.
Yeah. Well, actually, I had a good chat to the bassist from Living Colour. Okay, and he was offered something similar, I think, in the mid '80s. So I think it was, or maybe it was the late '80s. I think he might have played on a solo album, and there's that story. It's out. This is public knowledge. It's in there. It's been spoken about on some videos on YouTube and all the rest of it by the band themselves. But I think it wasn't David. Sorry, it was bloody. I'm getting my bands mixed up. I'm getting my Rolling Stones and my David Bowies mixed up. My apologies. God, that's a shocker. How could I get those two mixed up? Yeah, sorry. The whole point's redundant, so I'll just stop it right there. Stop it right there. But look, the other thing about your music, and I'm conscious of the fact that the bio actually talks about this. Okay, but I specifically remember when I heard Bloc Party, and I thought, guys, come on. Okay, this is pretty obvious what's going on here. It seemed to me at the time like I'm not going to say a rip-off because I think there is a vein of originality through their music, but when you heard bands like Bloc Party and even to a lesser extent the guys in Fugazi come out with their music, could you hear could you actually hear yourself on that music? Was it really obvious to you as well as it was to someone like me?
Yeah. I mean, there's it was a bit funny because Bloc Party, when the first album came out, they journalists said, "Oh, you seem to be quite influenced by Gang of Four," and they came up with some sort of story that actually no, they weren't really aware of Gang of Four, but they had heard the record just as they were mixing their record or something. I don't know. But I think Fugazi are fairly open about the Gang of Four influence, but there's a lot of it about, basically.
Well, the other thing was I didn't know this either until I was preparing for our conversation, but you produced, I believe, or you mixed, or you had a lot to do with the first Chili Peppers album. Now, I can hear, as I think anybody who's a musician can hear, a lot of your work in John Frusciante's work, but I had no idea that Hillel Slovak. I mean, it's obvious now that I might join the dots, but Hillel must have been a bit of a sponge when you were giving him advice or when you were talking to him in the studio. Is that the case, or was it a bit different?
Actually, what happened there, the lineup at that point was Jack Sherman was playing guitar on that first album, not Hillel.
Okay.
People get this wrong, but it was Jack Sherman was playing guitar, and there was obviously Flea and Anthony, I produced it, and it was quite an entertaining experience.
Yeah. Did Flea still have his Australian accent at that time? Because he's born here. He's born in Melbourne.
Yeah, no, I do know. I think he's got I think he's got a house in Australia, doesn't he? I think.
I think just quietly spends a lot of time here because he posted something recently where his grandmother unfortunately passed away, and it mentioned Melbourne,
Right.
which is a suburb down there in Melbourne. I'm in Queensland.
Yeah.
It's a couple of states away from me, but I think he must still spend a lot of time here. There were rumours that people would see him walking down the main street of Ulladulla from time to time, which is on the south coast of New South Wales. And I think that was confirmed during a couple of Australian interviews when he said he had a holiday house there. So, I mean, you can understand, God, you'd want to get out of the rat race that is California from time to time. And what better place to come on the south coast of New South Wales, especially if you've got family here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, he talked about, Australia. I remember at the time he talked about Australia. And then when I met him more recently, over the last 10 years, he gave me his number, and it was an Australian number.
There you go.
So
there you go. Another bassist that I think has been very strongly influenced by your work is David from the band Jesus Lizard, and I think you worked with them as well. So what was that? What was the album that you worked with those guys on?
It's called Blue, I think. Yeah, it's called Blue. They're great guys. I loved working with them in Chicago, and doing that album. It was a lot of fun, and they're great, amazing live. Have you ever seen them live?
I haven't. No, I thought they'd broken up actually, but
well, they did. But they've just recently, in the last 6 months, they've been doing a lot of playing actually. So I don't know where they've been playing, but I really like them. Dwayne, the guitarist.
Oh, Dwayne Dennison, from Tomahawk as well. He was in that band as well. Yeah, he's phenomenal. Well, I can hear your echoes of your playing and his playing too. It's that. Let's get as much energy, and it's not. I was about to say sustain. It's not sustain. It's like the way I feel as though you've approached guitar playing is like every note's really important. So attack it and make sure that it makes a point.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
It's very hard to copy you, mate. I was just working with my band last night, and we're trying to get the guitarist. He's a pretty good guitarist, by the way. But the song "New Sensation" by INXS.
Yes.
This is my own theory. I don't think Andrew Farriss played that. I could be completely wrong. I think it was Nile Rodgers that did that because I'm a guitarist too, and it's too bloody hard to get on, to get right on.
Yeah.
I've tried to play along to some.
You're probably right. I mean, Nile Rodgers is a phenomenal guitarist, and he can do the really difficult stuff that us mere mortals can't do. So, you're probably right.
Yeah. Well, your playing reminds me of his a little bit. I can hear the similarities. Is that a fair comparison? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the guitar stuff that I like, and that has kind of coloured the way I approach it, was primarily Hendrix. Because as a young teenager, I was all over Hendrix, and then but then there's the exact opposite, which is that very, very tight, funky kind of stuff, like on Stax Records with Steve Cropper. That, and I think Steve Cropper is the antecedent of Nile Rodgers, which is that kind of knowing your chords and playing it in a really clipped, funky way. Which is kind of the opposite of Hendrix, But both of those things are sort of important to me. The funky groove and the wild feedback stuff, they both really have a part to play for me.
Where did you get your ideas for the rhythms and the grooves? Because it sounds like, I'll place a bet and say that you didn't labour over it at all. It comes to you very naturally. It's just a part of your inner rhythm. But it sounds a lot like you spent tens of hours getting it right, because it's perfect. Like when I listen to it as a musician, and I think, what would I do differently here? And don't get me wrong, I'm not that great a musician, but I often critique music that way because it's part of my job as an indie journalist to do that. But when I listen to your material, like with Niles, like with the guys in Living Colour, I think I just leave it. It's actually all there. You've done everything that could be done, given the the chords that you've chosen to carry the melody. So it's pretty much it's. I feel the same way about Depeche Mode's music, or especially their mid period. I call it around Ultra. They really got it right around there. But is that my comments about your music? Is that true? Is it all just very natural for you, or do you have to really work at it?
Well, I think it is fairly natural for me, and I do very much think in a rhythmic kind of way. It's often the starting point for something will be some kind of beat that, and very often the tracks that I'm drawn to that from by other people are very often the more rhythmic kind of things. I mean, early days of Gang of Four, of course, so I'd be saying to Hugo, well, you should put the snare on the 3.5.
Yes.
Put the hi-hat here, put the open hi-hat there, and he'd be like, "What the fuck do you know? Why am I going to take direction from you?" So we'd just argue it out. I mean, I think left to his own devices, Hugo would do kind of straight rock beats, but I was determined that they would be. For me, it was like starting to write a new language. I didn't want to take off-the-shelf drum beats. I wanted to work from the ground up and to very carefully place different beats in different, in wherever it was in the bar. And so, you got these, but I wanted it to be, a groove and funky, and to not just last. A couple of months, but to keep going through the song, and that's what gives that kind of mesmerizing, driving feel to it.
You can dance to your music. I'm sure you've gotten that feedback plenty, but God, I know I've done it. I know exactly what you're saying about open the snare on 3 and 3.5. I totally get that. God, I've tried to work with so many drummers and have those, not that specific conversation, but work on the half beats, actually anticipate the beat. And on this bit here, you want to be slightly behind it, but slightly behind the beat. But because they're not, I'm not a technical person, so I have to demonstrate it, either get behind the kit myself and do it, or demonstrate it by being like using a lot of syncopation on the guitar or the bass to prove the point. But and I think maybe subconsciously I've taken a lot of that from you guys and from Chic as well. It's hard to find musicians who really get that. I was talking to Ronnie Francois. You might have heard of him. He's a bassist. He's born in the UK, but he was in a Australian band called Eurogliders.
I remember. Eurogliders.
Yeah, fabulous bass player. Yeah, check out. To prove my point, I had a conversation with him, and he sort of laughing along with me because he knew what I was talking about, similar to what the conversation we're having here. But the song Heaven, he does it all by himself on the bass, where he's bringing the beat slightly forward with some of the hammer-ons that he's doing with the slapping and the popping of the bass, and it just brings the song to life. And that point was proven when many years later the singer of the band decided to re-record the track without any of that wonderful bass line, and the song fell apart. And you know what I'm saying? It's this really important emphasis on the cadence of the beat, and without it, the music just doesn't work. And it's something, just to reiterate the point, it's something that you understand intuitively.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, cool, mate. It's been. I feel like I could talk for a lot longer. Apologies for the mix-up here, but look, it's really thrilling to finally chat to you. I've been listening to your music a long time, as I've explained, and I'll certainly. I've got 2 kids these days, so it's very hard to get out and watch bands on top of everything else. But if there's a band I'm going to come and see, mate, it's you guys.
Well, thanks very much, and I hope you can make it, despite the kids. And if you want to chat anymore, like tomorrow, whatever, just get in touch with John. But if we don't, it's been good talking to you.
No worries. Is there any aspect of your career that you don't feel has been covered and you'd like to have a talk about? Because I've got a podcast series and I do a lot of writing and it gets syndicated and sent places. So if there's any aspects of your career that haven't been covered, just let me know, mate. We'll have a good chat about it.
Yeah, I mean, possibly, I mean, the current album is kind of very fresh in my mind. So if you wanted to talk about the current album, Happy Now.
Happy Now, pledge music, yeah. I mean, I've got a whole list of questions here I planned on asking, but it's always hard for me because I've done almost 400 of these interviews now, and when I talk to an artist who I've been directly influenced by, I tend to disregard the questions and ask my own personal questions like I've done. But I mean, the tour I think will be very well attended. By the way, there's a lot of serious musicians that are very much looking forward to you. I'm sure a lot of regular punters who just like rock and pop music are going to come along too. But I think you understand my point. You're a musician yourself, and you're a band that really appeals to musicians.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's really true. Yeah,
wonderful. All right, mate. No worries. Thank you very much.
So if you want to do a podcast thing, in the next day or two, that's absolutely fine too. It's up to you.
Okay, mate. Well, look, what I'll do is I'll just reach out. I'll reach out to John. I'll just ask him, and then did you want me to reach out to him, or do you want me to hit you up on Skype?
Reach out to him because he's kind of got an overview of what time I can do things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
Although he does seem to get things wrong as well sometimes by an hour.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'll
not your fault. Not your fault.
No worries, mate. All right, well, genuine chat, thrilled to chat to you, and hopefully we chat again real soon.
Cheers, mate.
Okay, then.
All
Catch
right.
you.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Well, there you have it, a conversation with Andy Gill. Passed away in 2020, and he is sadly missed. A guitar legend, no doubt. Okay, if you like that chat, you might like to listen to many more, which are available on Scars and Guitars, or even this YouTube app, if that's where you're consuming it via. But go across to the website because there's some other really cool things there for you too. So I've written a book, Conversations from the World of Hard Rock, Heavy Metal and Beyond. Its title is Scars and Guitars Volume 1. Click the link in the banner and you'll be taken to a marketplace of your choice. And you know the rest. Download a sample, and if you do complete the purchase, just hit me up because I want to thank you personally, as plenty of people have. Now, there's some more information to share with you about the book, but before I do, I'll bid you a farewell. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I'm the host of this show, this Scars and Guitars podcast. Until next time, it's a goodbye for now.
This is Eric Rattan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew Mackay-Smith.
I've been the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast since 2017. The first musician I interviewed for the show was David Vincent from Morbid Angel, and things have just snowballed from there. In all, I've posted almost 650 podcast episodes featuring conversations with many of the leading lights of rock, heavy metal, and beyond. It just got to a point where I thought, I need to write a book about all this, so that's exactly what I did. In Scars and Guitars Volume 1, you'll read a heap of deep reveals and commentary, such as Des Fafara talking about Coal Chamber and why the band will never return.
If you're a band just starting out, you need to hear me. Do not start a band with partners. Ever.
Yeah, wise words, sage advice, mate, for anybody.
Don't ever, because I can't go do Coal Chamber right now unless I get others involved.
Phil Anselmo talks about the episode in his career which gives him the greatest sense of accomplishment.
I think the staying power of the fans and the staying power of the songs, whether it's Pantera, Down, or Superjoint, the fans remember the songs.
Alex Skolnick from Testament confirms that, yes, playing the guitar in Ozzy's band is anything but an ordinary gig. Will Silent Oz from Dimmu Borgir write a book? Pa from Sabaton gives advice to people who want to start a band.
Look at the team around you, look at the bandmates. If the guys want to be on the stage, then it's all cool. If the guys want to be backstage, then it's not going to be cool.
Current and former members of Cradle of Filth discuss the band's seminal 90s material. Read about the reaction to George Lynch and Mark from Suicide Silence's comments when they throw shade at then President Donald Trump.
We have this idiotic monster, this egotistical, self-aggrandizing, complete piece of shit in there. I just can't understand how we've gotten to this place.
And yeah, we kicked a hornet's nest with Sepultura. Percussive overlord Gene Hoglan talks about recording with Chuck Schuldiner.
Chuck was always, he was very, very open-minded, and he was into having his musicians that were playing with him just reach out for the best stuff that they had.
Phil Campbell from Motorhead discusses what it takes to get sober. John Five answers his critics who dismiss his tenure with Marilyn Manson.
My name is John Five, and Manson gave me that name, and I had some of the best years of my life in that band and learned a lot.
And we get the lowdown on Treyarch Zagtoth from those who would know, including his mother. All across Scars and Guitars Volume 1, there are moments of tension, relief, tragedy, exhilaration, and throughout it all, you'll obtain insight that I believe no one else has managed to obtain from many of your favourite artists. So treat yourself. Scars and Guitars Volume 1 is currently available as an ebook with a print edition on the horizon. Follow the links attached and download a sample. I'm sure you'll be compelled to read the whole book.